Fantastic. Hey, good morning, everyone. You all right? Yeah? Good, good. Thank you. So, I'm obviously continuing after Dami now. We're going to be talking about kindness. Now, just obviously, this has been spoken with pretty much every message, but again, just to reiterate, when we talk about fruit of the Spirit, what we mean and what we're talking about is we're saying as the Spirit works in us, these are the fruit that come from that. Now, by fruit, what I'm talking about is like the results. It's almost like, you know, when I click this button, the TV turns on, right? That is like the fruit of me clicking the button. So the fruit of the Spirit's work in our lives are all of these things that we've spoken about. We'll talk about patience this morning, and we're also just looking now at kindness, right? Now, about 10, 15 years ago, I joined a wonderful website called Facebook. Everybody got Facebook? Of course we do, yeah? Silly question. Now, I'm going to be honest, Facebook, I don't really look at Facebook that much anymore. Like, I kind of just, like, drift a little bit, and I see some things and everything like that. But there is one little pocket inside Facebook that I love more than anything, right? And it's a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. And the title of the group is the Newport Pagnell Chit Chat Group, right? Anybody else in the Newport Pagnell Chit Chat Group here? A few people, right? Okay, maybe you've got in your own estates, have you got like an Old Brook chit chat group or a Monkston chit chat? Has everybody got one of those that they're a part of? Yeah? Oh, they're great, aren't they? Don't you love reading through them? I love it. It makes some great bedtime reading because sometimes you see some of the craziest like conversations, some of the wildest like opinions that you know ever in these things. And I love just sitting there and scrolling through and just like, you know, if someone says a bit controversial, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like that. That's a bit controversial there. That's fun to watch. But I love it. And it really, there's kind of two sides to the chit chat group. There's kind of like the one side where people are so, you know, kind, and they kind of are you know, bigging up people that have done great things in the community. So maybe somebody's, you know, like a 7-year-old boy is like, you know, done a 24-hour run around Willen or something, and people are like, yeah, that's amazing, you're the best, you're the man, you know, and everyone's kind of going and they're encouraging him and they're bigging him up and praising him, and it's wonderful, and I love seeing things like that. That's great. But then sometimes you see those same people that have posted about that, and you see kind of them on the other side, and it could be about anything. It could be about dog poo. Could be about the youth today, which are all criminals in their minds, you know. It could be about, I mean, in the Newport Chit Chat group, there's been a whole thing recently talking about the migrant kind of crisis, and it's been kicking off big style, honestly. I see Laura at the back. Laura doesn't even live in Newport. You're a part of the group, aren't you? I invited her in I was like, Laura, you got to see this. You got to see what's kicking off. It's crazy. And it's funny and it's fascinating because I think, in a way, like this little group is almost like it's a very intense but picture of what our communities and often what life is like a little bit. And I think people forget sometimes the power of their words, the power that they've got to both build people up and then almost just a few minutes later, with their words, tear someone down, right? And whether it's because of ignorance or we forget, or that's just what we're like as humans, I think we forget that. And so really, look, if I was going to summarize my message today just in a couple of sentences, it would be this: that kindness wins people where unkindness will push people away, right? Kindness will win people where unkindness will push people away. And I've just got a few, like 3 places in the Bible that we're just going to look at today where I think the Bible talks about kindness and gives us reasons to believe in kindness, believe in the power of kindness, and hopefully find kindness, you know, in ourselves and the power for kindness. Now, the first verse is it's found in 1 Corinthians 13. Can I have my water? My mouth is dry. 1 Corinthians 13. Oh, thank you, Nick. Now, this verse, or this chapter, you hear all the time. Every wedding you ever go to, you hear. Did anybody have this passage read at their wedding? Yeah, of course. It's classic. It's that love is kind, love is patient, love is kind. It doesn't count wrongs, everything like that. But right at the beginning, we've got this wonderful verse that says this: if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but I do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal, right? If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but I don't have love when I do that, love isn't a part of what I'm doing when I do that, then I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Now, I don't know, are these drums working? Are they working? They're working. I've got to hit them harder. Can we turn it up a little bit? Now, let's just imagine for a second. Can we turn it up a little bit more? Let's imagine for a second that we're trying to have a... Oh, actually, that's a bit louder. Imagine we're having a nice quiet moment. We're singing Amazing Grace. It's a real slow bit. Closing my eyes, I'm trying to lift my hands, and I'm trying to focus on God, but all I've got in the back is this cymbal that is clanging away, making this horrible sound. I'm going to be honest, you could be the holiest person in the room, right? And I know there's some holy people here. It's going to be quite hard to focus while that's happening, isn't it? It's going to be hard, right? And I think this verse is so great. I call this a bit of a fighter verse. It's the kind of verse that we're going to want to memorize and have in our back pocket for times when life gets hard. Because this reminds me that in our words and in our actions, we could be saying the most poetic, brilliant, incredible things. We could have the wisdom of angels that we want to kind of give to guide people and help people. But if it is said with unlove, if it is said with unkindness, all the other person is going to hear is that clanging cymbal. In essence, what we've intended to be delivered, what we've intended to be communicated, is not what's been received by the other person, right? Unkindness will do that. It will completely distort the message regardless of what we've got to say and what we're trying to achieve. In essence, if there's no kindness or love in our words and in our lives, then we've already lost when we're trying to talk to someone, when we're trying to bring a message. I believe this is true in our marriages. I believe it's true in the way that we talk to our children. I believe it's true even in our workplace, when we talk to our boss, when we talk to people that are under us or people that we're working on projects with. It's true across everywhere, and it's definitely true in God's kingdom as well. Now, this second verse I wanted just to bring us to is John chapter 13, verse 34 to 35. Now, maybe a lot of us have heard this before. I'm just going to read it out, and I'm going to break it into, there's kind of three parts to this, really. It says this, a new command, this is Jesus talking to his disciples. He says, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. So that first bit where it says, a new command I give you, love one another. In essence, this is a command from Jesus, right? It's up there along with all the other commands. Imagine, do not murder. Do not use the Lord's name in vain. Love one another. This is a command that Jesus has given. And what he's doing is he's building on this picture of love that has been spoken about through the Old Testament, now into the New Testament. I mean, you think even before this, when, the passage of the Good Samaritan, for example, and Jesus was saying, yeah, you need to love your neighbor. And they're like, okay, I need to love my neighbor. And I was like, now you need to go further. We need to love one another. You need to be loving each other. He's laying down the law for what this kingdom that he's building is going to be like and what's going to be foundational in that. Now, the second part, there it says, as I have loved you, so you must love one another. Jesus is saying that he's demonstrated this. He's lived the life of love and of kindness towards his disciples. And now he's saying, look, you've watched me do it. Now I want you to do the same. Just think back to the things that I've done. Think back to the way I treated you. Think back to the kindness that I spoke to with you. Think back to when I concerned myself over your welfare and your struggles. Think back to when I was patient with your failings. I want you to do exactly the same that I've done. Just copy me, okay? And then that last bit that says, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Now, for me, this one hits really heavy. I think this is it's a challenging verse to live out. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Essentially, this command, right, to love one another is core to the reputation of Jesus' followers and what it means to be a Christian. In essence, he's saying, look, the future reputation of this movement, the future reputation of the followers of God is going to rest and lay upon the way that you love each other. Like a badge, like you go into work, you've got a lanyard, you've got a badge that says your name and who you are, where you're from, what your business is. In the same way, our love for each other is going to be that badge, so that as people look at us, they see the way that we love one another, and they're going to know straight away, this person loves Jesus. This person's a follower of God. This person is a follower of the way. He's one of Jesus' followers, right? Now, the last little area that I just want to look at and give you as an example, we're going back in the Old Testament. And I've been practicing all morning to pronounce the name. Mephibosheth. You know Mephibosheth? Does someone else know Mephibosheth? It's an easy name to forget, but an incredible story. And so this is David, King David, and we're at a point in David's life where he's now king over Israel. Saul had died. Saul's son, Jonathan, who was David's best friend, had also died as well. And David is king, and he's doing a pretty good job of it. He's had a lot of victories. He's doing well. He's ruling the land. He's listening to God, and he's doing quite a good job. And in 2 Samuel chapter 9, we see this moment where David goes out and he says, is there anybody in Saul's house who I can show kindness to? Right? Now, just again, a little bit of context. Saul was the previous king. He felt very threatened by David. So threatened that he tried to kill David. Right? So they kind of didn't end up on good terms. David ended up waiting for Saul to kind of like die before he then ascended to the throne. But really, they weren't on good terms, right? And David, who really, normally culturally, he would be wanting to kind of like squash any threats to his throne, getting rid of Saul, getting rid of any kind of like descendants of Saul. But instead, David's here and he's saying, is there anyone in Saul's house that I can show kindness to? And so a man called Ziba, who was one of the servants of Saul, comes, and David says to Ziba, and he says this, and it's on the screen, 2 Samuel 9, verse 3. The king asked, is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness? And David said that there was still a child of Jonathan, and that's the man Mephibosheth. He said, he's the son of the child of Jonathan, who was the son of Saul, and it turns out he is also actually lame in both of his feet. And so David calls this grandson of Saul to him, and Mephibosheth bows down and pays great respect to David. And David tells him, he says this, Mephibosheth, I'm going to restore to you all of the land that Saul had, and not only that, I'm going to make sure that you eat at my table forever, right? Because I want to do this for you. Now, Mephibosheth, who, to be honest, probably didn't expect this, his self-esteem, given his circumstances, given the fact he was the grandson of a kind of disgraced king at this point and is lame in both feet, self-esteem and rock bottom, responds to David and says this, what is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? David, at that, goes and talks to his servant Ziba and tells him this. He says, I've given your master's grandson everything that belongs to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for Mephibosheth and bring him the crops so that he may be provided for. And Mephibosheth, the grandson of your master, will always eat at my table. And from that day on, the Bible records that Mephibosheth sat at David's table and he ate. And in the words of the Bible, it says he ate there as if he was one of David's own sons, right? Now, this is a wonderful story, I believe, of culture clashing, kindness that really was not expected and not seen from the kings of the day. Even now would be really quite strange. But there's those few words that we looked at earlier that I think really kind of bring to light, and that's kind of the focal point of where this all comes from for David. And it was that verse in 2 Samuel 9, verse 3. Where David said, is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness, right? I love that they included that David said that. Because then there's no question as to where that was coming from, where the motivation was for David to do this and to show kindness like this. It came because he knew that it was God's kindness being expressed to Mephibosheth. And so in this moment, David brings together that principle of experiencing God's kindness And then knowing that he is now a carrier of God's kindness to the people around him, and actually being bold enough and brave enough and humble enough to act on that and do something about it, right? I love what Bex shared last week. I don't know if you were here last week. She had she was pouring the water into the vase and it overflowed. Do you remember that? And the principle is the same. It's the same for patience. It's the same for what we're talking about in all of these, that as we experience God pouring his spirit into our life, his kindness, his patience, his joy into our life, the more that we're aware of that, the more that it is going to pour out into all of our actions, into our words, into our marriages, our families, our workplaces, our schools, right? As we are aware of what God pours into us, we will naturally, as a result of that, pour out from that place, knowing that we're just carrying God's kindness. See, where the world will hold efficiency and performance as the kind of pinnacle in life, I think we've got a clue from the Bible and from God that actually kindness will do incredible things, right? Kindness is how we win people. Kindness is how we're going to change the world. Kindness is how God is going to build his kingdom, right? So I'm going to hand back to John for now, who's just going to help close up for us. Thank you very much for your time.